What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Dynasty Underdog. Billy Beeman here. No Uriah Dawkins, but I do have Jake with me. We do have a couple of PSAs tonight. Going to be talking about some player value, some rookie pick value. It should be a pretty good one. But Jake, how you doing before we get into it?
Dude, I am doing well. I just can't believe it's like already the NFL playoffs. I don't know, man. I don't know where this year's went. It's just kind of blown by, but I'm excited to be here. Non-point scoring season is honestly for me probably where I'm most actionable and where I'm trying to take
Mhm.
most advantage. And honestly, life is going to come at me fast. I feel like I've told a few folks, including yourself, but I'll be moving in a few months. And so I need to probably be as actionable now in the next 3 to 5 weeks before that shit beats the living crap out of me. So, yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point. You're definitely going to have some decision fatigue
Yeah.
as you're, heading overseas and figuring life out over there. Yeah, you're going to want to get ahead of that for sure. It's going to be a crazy year for you. But yeah, let's get into it, man. So first PSA, I do like this one, bouncing off of topic we went into last week. It's okay to take a break. This is that's kind of Uriah's motto at the end of the season. But the question is did we take a break? How was it? And will it continue? I mean, I'm going to jump in real quick. I kind of just I honestly couldn't take a full break because I commissioned a bunch of leagues. It was sending out dues, kind of like getting things set for, turning the leagues over and everything like that. But other than that, I didn't really do much because I'm kind of doing the, management of the league. I'm not really looking at my team and trying to make trades at that time. And I kind of didn't hop into the Discord as much. Just kind of tried to, take it easy for a week, knowing that as soon as I turn these leagues over, I'm gonna want to like really get going. And so most of my leagues haven't been turned over, even the ones that I don't commish. So it's been kind of easy to do that. But yeah, I'm excited to get back into it. So yeah, I did kind of shut off a little bit. And just kind of watch football. I enjoyed week 18. It was kind of madness. It's not even like real football at that point, but it was fun to just kind of watch it and not have any like stake in it. But other than that, yeah, man, I'm excited for the playoffs, obviously, because I am a Patriots fan, so this should be an interesting one. But yeah, other than that, that's really all I did. What about you, Jake? Did you do anything to kind of take a break, or did you continue working?
Yeah, I was texting you about this. I honestly like ripped the Band-Aid off on all the leagues that I commission like, immediately. I don't know. As I'm getting older, I've noticed that I get severe anxiety over this like idea that there's others waiting on me. And I honestly appreciate the living fuck out of Billy with his leagues that he commissions because he's just like, I'm gonna run the show how I want to run the show, and it's gonna move on my pacing, and everyone else can literally like just back off and respect that. And me, I feel like I feel the not peer pressure aspects, but like I try to get ahead of it so that I don't feel that way. And so I was basically, as soon as leagues were done, I was paying out everybody the next day. And then I was literally turning it over to 2026 with draft picks already sorted and everything. Like literally, I was done, I think, by Wednesday after games were done. So I gave folks like basically the sleeper cutoff for stat corrections. And then I was just like, all right, let's get this over with because I don't want to hear from anyone for a while. And so what I've done is instead, I then shut off waivers for a month. And then basically I'm like, come February 1st, I'll turn waivers back on. We'll start the whole process again. Trades are active for the time being. But like, honestly, the only thing I want from you is your dues if you haven't paid 2026. And I'll speak to you when I need to process a trade. But mentally, from like a playing perspective, what I've been doing selfishly is I've been modeling out everyone's rosters in some of the leagues that I've been trying to be a little bit more poignant in. So I'll be honest about that. That's going to be DU2, DU4, and DU5, specifically from the listener leagues. And specifically, like I'm just trying to figure out kind of like what my angle is going to be in 2026. Specifically DU2, I know for a fact I'm going to be competing again. I'll openly and honestly say that to everybody who is listening. DU4, I already started to target the quarterback market successfully like I wanted to. I targeted the quarterback market like I wanted to in DU4, so I was able to get up to, I think it's 4 or 5 starting quarterbacks there, starting from basically 1, which was awesome. Really happy about the work that I got there. And then DU5 is really just about kind of maximizing on all of the roster, quote unquote, value that I had and just turn it into probably starters by the end of this upcoming season. So I'm competing in 2027. So I think being able to take those 3 pieces just away in the last week has been so valuable to me. And I haven't made any moves or anything like that. I haven't even sent out any trades, but it's just like being able to visualize what I want out of those rosters and how and who I'm trying to impact, because there are definitely some rosters specifically in DU5 that I need to start making moves against to have longer term success in 2027. And so, yeah, I think that's going to be the most important work that I'll be doing over the next few weeks before I start worrying about the move.
That's good stuff. That is really good stuff. I do think that'll be kind of what I'll be doing over the next week or two, honestly, is really looking at a couple of those teams that I've been talking about really throughout the year that I want to, give a little bit more attention to and just kind of figure out a path. So definitely, I think you're prepping yourself for success. You'll be ahead of the game and you know kind of what you need when you go into these trades, and other people will kind of just be trading for trading and you'll be trading for a reason. And so that's kind of the difference. Real quick here in the comments, Tommy says, congrats, Jake. Appreciate you being here, Tommy. Okay, let's keep it moving here. Okay, PSA 2026 draft picks in Dynasty Daddy, Trade DB. Why does it matter?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about this. There's one of those like really famous dynasty charts about like when picks are valued at their lowest and their highest. We're currently in one of those ramp up windows. So you're going to start to see the 101 and subsequent picks that are now valued out as what they actually are, instead of that, very boring nomenclature that you'll find on Dynasty Daddy of 2026 first, that you're like, how did someone trade a 2026 first for Patrick Mahomes? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then you like find out that it was maybe the 101. I'm not saying that that's good value. All I'm saying is it makes a little bit more sense than just thinking to in your mind, like it's a random 2026 first. So being able to provide that value and understand what those picks are able to now move for, I think gives us a better gauge of what we can do with or without those picks. And now is really the time to start attacking that, especially as you're talking about, in my opinion, the 108 to 112. That would be a great range to start getting into scoring assets come 2026 season. So if you can start to move those types of pieces at what looks like a more accelerated value right now for maybe something that's more depleted, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Or being able to get into that for maybe an asset that is at an all-time high that you just don't think is going to hold that value. Maybe it makes more sense to do that because you know that the 108 to 112 will continue to increase in value as you get closer to the NFL draft and subsequent Dynasty Leagues rookie drafts. But yeah, I think that's really helpful because this is some of our best ways to be able to view the value behind these picks. Anything you want to add there?
Not too much. I mean, I do think this is a super valuable resource that most people probably aren't utilizing now. And this is definitely a time to do it. I don't know if this is, obviously for certain trades and certain assets, definitely willing to move off of late firsts. But we also know that they'll continue to gain value for a while up until the draft. So no problem holding those. I wouldn't mind looking at this trade database almost for the other reason, to buy them and, see if there's, like Jake was saying, if there is some of those, moves where you can get off of some players for those kind of picks. They're probably going to gain some value over time. But again, it's more so having something that can show you what's actually happening in the market, and you can gauge for yourself whether you feel it's above or below, and then you can attack those kind of deals. That's really what a lot of this time should be spent doing. If you can, you'll be ahead of the market and you'll be able to make, those micro trades that are going to really pay out in the end. Okay. Real quick one here. I saw this on Twitter. Last week we were talking a little bit about the pain at the end of the season when you do so well. And then you end up falling off, and maybe you only have one championship, out of 8 semis like me. This isn't coming from personal place, don't worry. But I did see this. I did see this, and I thought it was interesting. So Dynasty Zoltan, who I know does run a ton of leagues, whether you agree or disagree with his takes on Twitter, the highest regular season score won 34% of my leagues from 2019 to 2024, and never lower than 29% in a given year. This year, 22%. So the highest regular season scorer in his leagues, typically would win somewhere between 29 and 34% of the time. This year was 22%, so a lot lower. It's just a crazy year. It was just a lot of randomness. I think we all felt it. It's, that's not completely indicative. It's still a limited sample, but I do think that it's just kind of another, piece of proof that it was kind of a crazy season. You shouldn't feel so bad, especially if you had, a really high conversion rate going into the playoffs. So just wanted to say that. Anything else, Jake?
No, I think that's good stuff.
Okay, cool. So let's move on. This was actually a topic that I think somebody may have thrown out for the show a couple weeks ago, maybe, or I think it was like 2 weeks ago. And I thought this was a really good one to discuss. Rookie wide receiver breakdown. So we're looking at current ADP from Dynasty Data Lab. So we have T-Mac at the 306. We have Ibuka at 401. That might be the first time I've ever said his name properly. Luther Burden, 612, and then Travis Hunter at the 704. I definitely don't think if we were talking about this back in, April or whatever, around that time, we would ever have expected Travis Hunter to be, fourth on this list. Do you kind of agree with that ADP? Do you think there's anything to take advantage of there?
Yeah. I agree with the ADP in the essence of what
happened.
yeah, exactly.
If we're going by reality.
Yeah, exactly.
This makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you. The pause was clear that I didn't know the direction I wanted to go with that. And yes, I think it is very much reality. For me, it's all about purchasing Luther Burden and Travis Hunter at what I think is the perceived cost at 612 and 704. And honestly, I'm going to be fading Tetero and McMillan and Emeka Ibuka at the 401, T-Mac at the 306, given that I know that I can get into other assets at that price that I feel significantly more comfortable that will hold that value over those two assets. And for me, I think a lot of this conversation is the actionability, but also so much of what we actually got to see in 2025. We saw a lot of Tetero McMillan, and we saw a lot of Emeka Ibuka. The funny thing is, we didn't actually get to see a lot of Luther Burden due to his preseason injury, which held him back and kept him off the field for early part of the season because he didn't have a lot of those preseason reps. And Travis Hunter was unfortunately injured by week 7, which, funny enough, was probably statistically his best week of the year. I think he had 7 or 8 receptions for 110-ish yards and a touchdown, which unfortunately he ended up jacking up his knee, I believe it was, and calling it quits for the season. For me, so much of the visualization, I think, is defined for a lot of people for the narratives behind all 4 of these players. They think that they saw enough, and I just don't believe that that's the case. So what is your takeaway currently with both ADP and kind of what you saw so far this season?
Yeah, so we have Iston also in the YouTube chat buying Hunter at that price all day. I definitely think that's a reasonable take. I would buy Hunter at that price too. But looking at this, I mean, it makes sense. It totally makes sense just given kind of the whole thing. Also, there's got to be some concern with Hunter given they bring in Jacoby Myers. They now give him a contract. They also have Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter, right? There's definitely a lot of mouths to feed. Not that we haven't seen, that be done successfully, but still, there's just kind of, I think it's going to be a different makeup when he comes back one way or another. And do they want to use him a little bit more on defense than they did on offense? Again, I agree kind of at this price, he's worth getting into and finding a way. So I'm not saying don't do it. I just think that when I look at him or Luther Burden, I'm much more comfortable getting into Luther Burden. And I look at this list, and it doesn't have to be this necessarily, but just because it's in front of me like this, trading T-Mac for Luther Burden. Did I just lose Jake? Okay. I feel like I need to get him back before I keep going. Let me see where he went. Oh, there he is. Okay. You okay there?
It booted me out. I don't know.
I completely stopped the show because I wasn't
Sorry.
about to keep going without you. So you ruined the show. So okay. So what I was going to say is, looking at this list, and it doesn't have to be this player. There's other players I'm sure you could do this with, but I would happily trade T-Mac for Luther Burden plus a significant, whatever the difference is between the 306 and the 612 in value. You know what I mean? Which it feels like you might be able to get close to a first, probably not a first, but close to it. Maybe a couple seconds, and Luther Burden for T-Mac or something like that. Like, would you feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, I think a third. You're saying between a third round startup and an end of a sixth round startup. I think that gap is probably a first. Absolutely. Like,
okay, yeah, all right.
yeah.
So
I think if we're
that's what I'm
just looking
saying,
at
like,
just startup value, 100%. Like, if you took
which
the
is not
names away,
how it works. That's not how it works. But what I'm saying though is, like, I would feel comfortable trading T-Mac for Luther Burden in a significant plus. So, like, if that's the difference in value between these guys, and Luther Burden is at that point, like, I like that value out of all these guys. Like, I don't, I'm not super interested in buying into Ibuka at that price. I also think you can hold on to him if you want, but there's probably room to sell both of those guys, given, how valuable they are coming off of their rookie seasons. Not that they're not good players. I think they're both really good players, but Luther Burden also has much more upside. I mean, you can argue Travis Hunter does as well. It's just, I think there's more to be concerned about with Hunter, given the injuries, the play time, the people they've added to the team. Like, it's just a whole, like, Burden is going into a situation where people are probably going to be removed from the team, not added to the team. So yeah, I mean, it's just a super interesting conversation looking at these guys. And I mean, I don't think we would have ever ranked them this way necessarily. Ibuka was probably at the back of this, Hunter at the front. So, it's just something to think about when you're drafting these players, in the future rookie drafts. Like, go with your gut, but there's always going to be windows to get into some of these guys as well, like Hunter and Burden and them. So yeah. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, just really quickly, I wanted to talk a little bit about where we had them in our own process, going back to our rookie rankings. And so I'll talk about us as a collective, and then I also want to just bring in our film review scoring. I don't have yours right in front of me, but I have my own rankings from my own scoring. So from the very top, we did have Travis Hunter collectively post-draft ranked as wide receiver 1, Tedero McMillan wide receiver 2, Emeka Ibuka wide receiver 3, and Luther Burden wide receiver 4, with a pretty large gap into Matthew Golden at wide receiver 5, right next to Jaden Higgins at wide receiver 6. So you could basically say that those two guys were tied, honestly, where they were in our rankings. That all being said, from like a film scoring perspective, I had Travis Hunter and Luther Burden almost tied. Like, they were off by literally a singular point difference between the two. Travis Hunter being my wide receiver 1 on tape, Luther Burden being my wide receiver 2. And if it would have been based off of 2023 tape instead of 2024, just because his role was significantly more expansive, it probably would have been switched, to be completely honest. And same thing with Tedero McMillan. I think his tape in 2023 was just significantly more appealing to the common eye than his 2024 tape. But going back, my tape review had Tedero McMillan as wide receiver 3, and Emeka Ibuka wide receiver 4. And all of this to say, like, I think I want to continue to stick by some of my priors here and note that I think that, yes, given the circumstances that are about to occur within Jacksonville, are a little bit more of, in my opinion, a means to mitigate any concerns of what this rehab process will probably look like for Travis Hunter going into 2026. So
Mhm.
knowing that they'll probably try and hold on to Parker Washington through the 2026 season and forward,
Parker
by
Washington too. Jesus.
and
Yeah.
Brenton Strange, there's
There's
a
so
lot of
much.
bodies there.
There's so
There
much
are,
going on there, man.
and they're all, I think, very attractive assets to begin with, but that's not the the point of the conversation. But Travis Hunter, I do foresee being, probably to Billy's point, maybe at the 704 there is a space where you can just say, I'll let go of it here and allow someone else to take on even that
Hmm.
investment, and wait until probably the market sentiment gets even worse on him, because I do think that that is very much a reality, unfortunately, moving forward. But with that all being said, I did spend some time prior to us recording today to watch Travis Hunter's tape, just to feel a little bit more confident about kind of like where I'm sitting at. And truth be told, I do think that a lot of the rumors and verbiage about what type of work he was doing at Colorado were very much the case. And by that, I mean, there was a lot of talk that Travis Hunter honestly didn't do a lot of offensive work at Colorado. So when he
Yeah, that
came
he just
into
went
the
out there and
NFL,
played backyard football. Yeah,
and it kind of looked like
on
that, truth
offense.
be told.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why, you know, a lot of his man game was so good and he was able to beat man so well, is because he was just running routes that would cause separation. But in the NFL, it doesn't really work like that. And so I do want to provide some concern there, because I do think that as much as I appreciated his route running and specifically his ability to just play man, like play against man coverage, I should say, as someone who also plays corner, uh, it might be confusing. But to be able to play against man as a wide receiver, he needed to create space via zonal packages way more in the pros than he did against man. And I think that that is just generally concerning for me, because I now know that he is going to have another excess of period of time where he's not going to be able to practice his offensive game to the place that we
Mm.
want him to. And so I think it will just delay some of that impact that we're hoping for from him in the long term. And that's a slight concern for me. So I think moving forward, I still very much do agree with you. I think Luther Burden is very much at a very acquirable price here. And I would say the other three are probably bodies that I'd probably move away from. And that's just through thinking this through, instead of my initial gut reaction where I was like, 704, that's not bad. I'll snap Travis Hunter there. I think there's probably space here for us to be a little bit more patient than taking him at the 704.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, out of these four, I'm most interested in Luther Burden. So I really like that value. But just last thing I'll throw out there with the film grades, I had these guys in order: Travis Hunter, Ibuka, McMillan, Burden, but they're all within a point of each other, and the greatest difference being 3 points. So 73 for Burden, 76 for Hunter. They were really close, and I always was saying that this class was super tight, at the top with the wide receivers. And after that, it was kind of a crapshoot, which it did end up being. So yeah, very interesting list of guys. I thought it was a really good conversation. I'm glad we got to dive into that one. Okay, let's keep it moving here. How are we attacking player values and why? So we're going to talk a little bit about buying, selling, and holding, and just kind of the approach there. So Jake, I'll start with you. Kind of what's the approach when we're, attacking player values in terms of buying? Like how do we target who we want? When do we target them? Are you aligning with the market and acquiring at or near their ceiling? Things like that.
Yeah, I think this is a really good conversation, especially because this is one of, I think, the most profitable times that we could be targeting both of this process,
Mm-hmm.
or like all three of this process. It's funny because shout out to Istin or Frank Bros in the Discord. There was a conversation about, I forgot who the player was earlier today, but basically along the lines of like, I'm not trying to sell them currently. Like, I really want to wait out and see what happens in free
Mm-hmm.
agency, just so that I can be properly patient and not lose out on some potential value gains in these circumstances. Or the other side of this is potential value losses. Maybe someone lands in a spot that makes them less desirable to the market, or another body lands in a roster or in a depth chart that ends up ruining an asset. I think of guys like Woody Marks, who can easily be deeply impacted by a free agent signing. And so when I think about what the buying process looks like I really am trying to go after either elite assets that maybe have some type of smudge or stain on them. I'm talking about right now, for whatever reason, Lamar Jackson. I think a lot of folks are going to be conscientious of what was going on with Lamar due to the head coaching changes. How could that possibly negatively impact him? You can think about injured players. There's folks like Malik Neighbors, for instance, is someone that I've been thinking about a lot. Oh, shout out. God bless you. Someone like Malik Neighbors, who, the injury conversation, I think, is already getting ridiculously out of hand with the healing process, and his quotes about, well, if I'm not healthy, I'm not going to play. Like, no fucking shit. Like, that's really what I would hope every player would say.
Player.
Yeah.
That's also, by the way, how pretty much every player does it, just so you know.
Especially in the offseason, right? Like, we're not talking about these guys being able to play in the playoffs. We're talking about them being able to start the season. And so, like, I find that conversation to be a little tiresome, to be completely honest. But yeah, Malik Neighbors, Lamar Jackson, I've been looking at, even we were talking about running backs a few weeks ago, talking about like someone like a Jonathan Taylor, who folks will probably be trying to get off of, or the idea of maybe
the aging running backs. Yeah, that's a good one to target. Those aging running backs that are elite aging running backs. Yeah.
Exactly. Same thing with CMC. There was probably someone who was willing to pay a first to get them into the championship this year. They might not have won it. Can you get in with like a younger running back in a second or something like that you're just not as high as market with? And that is the general space. Like, I'm not trying to buy Trevor Lawrence right now, where he is at an all-time high in comparison to what we've been seeing in the market. Caleb Williams, this wouldn't be the time to purchase him. Maybe if he has a 4 interception playoff game, we can talk about countering that, right? But like that is generally, like, these next 4 to 8 weeks is really going to be based off of either super negative player performance in the playoffs, and or just general market sentiment being completely against certain players. And like, one of the other like lesser assets that I've constantly looked at, even though I think the market is just basically saying that he's dead, is like Mark Andrews, right? Mark Andrews just signed a new contract with the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar's going to be there. The fact is, whoever comes in should be able to use Mark Andrews better than how he's been able to be used under Todd Monken. And so it's like, why not try and buy him for like 2/3 off someone who's probably scared shitless of Mark Andrews, right? So like, that's how I'm buying right now. What about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I definitely think along similar lines. Personally, I'm really not ever buying towards ceiling. I think most of my targets come from, honestly, market value. Like, what I'm looking for is something that, an inefficiency in the market really is what I'm looking for. Is there somebody who is lower value? Much of what you're saying, for injury reasons, Neighbors, Lamar Jackson, any of those kind of guys. Like, I'm really just looking for that. But that's really how I'm always doing it, whether it's this time of year or any other time of year. So in terms of buying, like, I need to, number one, like, believe the player is going to do something for my team for more than 1 year, usually, and that he is below what I think his true value should be. Like, that's pretty much my calculation for almost any target that I'm going to buy. Not often am I going to buy one at ceiling. I think I did that this offseason with Drake May, but I don't even think it was at his ceiling. Like, I think he was actually just below ceiling. He is now probably at a ceiling. I probably should sell him, but I might just be a fan and hold on to him because, that's fun too.
He a fan, he a fan, he a fan.
Oh no. But yeah, okay. So, I mean, I think buying is pretty straightforward. So we can move over to selling. So in terms of selling, Jake, what's the approach? Like, do you think we're less aggressive when we're selling versus when we're buying? I guess we can just start there.
Yes, yes, yes. As you can see in my my little subtitle that I put for this section, this is really the essence of this conversation. Like I don't want to
Yeah.
out the market. I don't want to out you guys as players, but we don't do enough. Like we just don't do enough to sell players. Like I'm gonna say it straight up. Like y'all are too fucking lazy. Like it's just dead ass. We are too lazy as individuals trying to sell players, and that is just truly looking at market sentiment and getting ahead of it. Like the market is going to tell you when players should be sold, and Billy just openly told you Drake May should be sold right now. Like it is very much a reality. We've talked about this. The Patriots had a very, very lackluster NFL schedule in terms of strength of schedule this year. He
Hey,
performed at an
hey,
incredible rate.
hey, hey,
I'm just
MVP.
saying.
All right.
I'm not taking anything away from him. It's a beautiful statistical season. He had a fantastic fantasy debut in the sense of like actually showing himself, showing his true colors. I'm not saying that. This is just the time to sell him when in reality he's going
For
to have a
sure.
regression next year. Someone is going to get scared and think of CJ Stroud or whoever like not true year 2 quarterback, but this is like his true blossoming as a year 2 quarterback. But the quarterback that is going to have whatever that year 3 regression looks like, get scared off of it. And then you can then recapitalize and buy him back for 2 firsts or whatever it is. Like there are ways around the market that we should be actively trying to pursue and take advantage of. And you know, I'm not trying to out you. I think just Drake May is the prime example. He is right now sitting
Yeah.
at 102 in ADP. Like he is sitting right behind Josh Allen. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be there based off of this past season. It's just we know that there will
I think he's
realistic
one on KTC. I think he's one on KTC.
even crazier. But that makes sense, you know. KTC is very
No, it makes sense for what.
yeah.
Yeah, you get
Yeah.
it. Like, yeah.
They have
But
a
I think like
strong kink for age on that website.
sorry to disrupt like your
Flow
spiel here. Yes, your flow. But like
spiel.
your flow. That was much better. But in terms of selling Drake May for that and then buying him back or buying a quarterback, like that in theory is like very easy to not that it's not easy to do as well. You can do it, but it's also like it's a lot of work to do. You know what I mean? And like, are you for sure going to get the value that, you know, you moved off of or the production or all those things? So there is a lot of like calculated, you know, risk going on there depending on what you want to do. So it like, I mean, we're going to talk about holding it in a minute here. So, but anyway, sorry to disrupt your flow, but I think that calculation is hard to work through sometimes.
I get it. I totally get it. But the reality is that we can attack the market in ways right now to best get off of those types of assets into assets that we feel just as comfortable in. Like that's the way that I see it. It's like I'm not trying to get off of Drake May and get into, I don't know, Baker Mayfield and 2 firsts. Like I want to get off of Drake May and get into Joe Burrow plus or get into Lamar Jackson plus. And I think that the market right now is telling me that I can do that. And I know that I can do that. And there's a time
Lamar
where
Jackson plus would be pretty nice for Drake May.
And I think that there is market sentiment to be able to do that. And so if you are capable of doing it, do it. And the reality is that when there is whatever that regression might be, you might have sold him to the biggest Drake May truther of all time. And maybe you don't get back into Drake May in that singular league. But thankfully for you, you're in, you know, 20 plus other leagues where you can get into Drake May back at
20, motherfucker. I mean, a lot, but not 20. Fuck
all
you.
right, all right. I apologize. I forgot what the funnel looked like again for you, but really, that is the sentiment that I want to get at. Is like we are so fearful. We were talking about this with one of our listeners in one of our listener leagues last week. They sold off of Brian Thomas Jr. for the 109 and a third or something like that, right? And it's like if you're, like I said last week, if you're willing to sell off of Brian Thomas Jr. for that, then you should have also been willing to sell off of Brian Thomas Jr. at his ceiling. And his ceiling existed last year. So it's being able to ask yourself, what does that value look like? And then go try and get it. so much of this process for a lot of people that I play with, a lot of people that you play with, a lot of people that play in this game. When things are going well and they're seeing that return on quote unquote investment hit their lineup every single week, it's incredibly challenging to get off of them at that ceiling value. And I completely get it, which is why right now is the best time to get off of players at ceiling value, because they're not doing anything on your fucking
They're
team
not scoring
except
anything.
for
Yeah.
giving you a dynasty daddy value that makes you feel all good inside because you're like, oh, look at how great my quarterback room is on dynasty daddy. Well, that's not scoring you points come start 2026 season. So like, let's be mindful of that and try and attack the best ways in which you can actually now recalibrate those points into multiple assets that will be able to do the same thing, because there's a depreciated asset out there like a Lamar Jackson, like a Joe Burrow, like a Justin Herbert, whoever it might be, like a Patrick Mahomes. Like, there are so many depreciated quarterback assets right now that we should be tackling and getting off of Drake May for. And it's like, let's be mindful of that. And that's all. That's all. What about you? I realize I talked a lot there.
No. I mean, like, I think I need to be more aggressive in general. In general, this should probably be just, for the next section. It doesn't. My whole thing should be more aggressive. Really, is what it should be. We'll get in that in a minute, but I do agree with you here that we're obviously much more aggressive in terms of buying, because I think it's easier to get a win that way, or a guaranteed win that way. Like, you can definitely buy into elite assets and know for sure these random picks that I'm selling are like really valuable, but also this guy is for sure, what I'm looking for and is going to carry that value for a long time. So it's a lot easier to do that. I think the worry is honestly with selling like a Brian Thomas Jr., back last year, is like, do I have an Amon-Ra St. Brown or something like that? Like that type of, value player that is going to maintain that value for a while. But, I guess one way to look at it is, even if you look at those players, right? Like, the value only gets to a certain point anyway. So if they're close to that value, which he was, Brian Thomas Jr. was at multiple firsts value, right? At least probably you could get 2 first plus for him at one point. Like, that's enough to kind of move off and reset and recalibrate, especially if you look at your team and say, honest with yourself, like, this team probably isn't winning this year, right? Or there's going to be, there's not going to be a reason to kind of keep this kind of value on my team, especially when you aren't sure. So that calculation is tough, but I do agree in terms of selling. We need to be more aggressive in the margins, especially not just with those assets. It's also with the guys that you're going to be willing to drop. Like, we've seen it not just with one person, but multiple people across leagues will drop, tight ends that are pretty valuable. Will drop running backs that are pretty valuable, who may have sucked for some reason, but it's either situational or somebody values them more than them being dropped. Even if it's a 4th round pick, you get something for them, not nothing for them, right? And so you go seek that out, and at the very least, go to Keep Trade Cut, go to Dynasty Daddy, and go type this player's name in. It takes literally like 3 seconds, and then it's showing you what the market's willing to pay for. And then go just send that out to some people. Like, that's the least you can do in terms of effort and being. It's not even aggressive. Let's be honest. Like, that's just like baseline effort to kind of do this stuff. But you need to be more aggressive in terms of looking for those deals, because if you're just willing to drop players, or you're willing to just give players up without looking at what the market value is, I mean, your competition's so far ahead of you. Or,
yeah. No,
it probably is.
That's 100% true. You brought up KTC because you were defining it as the market. And the one thing that I think a lot of people don't use KTC for is not looking at its current market value for an individual player, but looking at the historical market value for a specific player. Yeah. And the historical market value for a specific player will tell you what the natural sentiment will be of that individual player. So someone, for instance, that I think is like really, really unique, and we saw it this year, was AJ Brown, right? Like, AJ Brown, historical, legacy, dynasty, market value, naturally high, right? The player talent by itself, naturally high. And for whatever reason, the market value for a period of time flattened out to a place where you could have realistically gotten out of Emeka Ibuka for AJ Brown plus probably 1 to 2 firsts. Like, honestly, it was that bad, and it was that high for Emeka Ibuka. if you're capable of doing moves like that, that's currently in season. I'm fully aware of that and how that gets impacted. But if you're able to do something like that, you receive the same amount of points from Emeka Ibuka versus AJ Brown, if not get more from AJ Brown towards the end of the season. And on top of that, you get potentially starting assets and 2 firsts moving forward. Let's call it a first and a second. And you get a coin flip on the second pick. Like, regardless of what that process looks like, we're talking about being able to attack individual players based off of just extreme realities that we know no longer will exist over a period of time. And that's not a dig on Emeka Ibuka. Emeka Ibuka might go back up to that value over the next 18 months. I'm not trying to negate that. But the fact is that his rise to stardom in the Dynasty community was so unrealistic and almost unnatural that we knew that Mike Evans at some point was going to come back. We knew that Chris Godwin was going to come back. We knew that Jalen McMillan was going to come back. And it's like, we're now looking at Emeka Ibuka. We're like, wait, if all 4 of those bodies are there, is his role going to be just as small as it was towards the end of the season? Like, this guy who we were valuing for 2.5 to 3 firsts is like, is he still worth a first? Like, that's how dramatic this market gets. And it's like, why don't we try our best to completely capitalize off that? And when the individual players have that return value year over year, I feel far more comfortable, and this is definitely like a Tommy Blairism, I feel far more comfortable paying complete market value for an elite asset at like 3 firsts, knowing that they're a real deal, and selling out of a non-elite asset way too early and potentially just being able to cash out for 2 firsts. Whatever it might be. The pricing of it doesn't really matter to me, truth be told. It's really just about like
depending on the asset, of course.
Of course. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like if we're talking about, JCM, Cross Chimera, JCM, like, you're much more willing to be like, oh, if this guy can even get near a first, like, I'm getting out for sure on that. That's, I think we talked about this like a couple episodes ago. Yeah, in general, I think we were talking about like value and knowing when to get off of players or whatever. And I think it's not that hard. It's like if they're in a certain range of range of outcomes, potential outcomes, right? Like JCM, like this is a guy who you kind of know that like the height, even if he got to the heights, it wasn't going to be, Saquon Barkley or something. Like it was going to be decent, but not that, right? So you know that there's a ceiling there in terms of value. And then if you're talking about a Brian Thomas, you're like, oh, okay, like, am I really going to sell off this guy for a first and a second? Like maybe, but am I going to sell off him for 2 firsts? Like, yeah, like that should make more sense, where it's like, if he's getting there, that is a good cutoff point to be like, if you're willing to be a little more aggressive, I think those are your points where you kind of, find the thresholds with the different valued players. And you just say, all right, it's time to move. Cause like, I think you make a great point, which is something that's hard for me to do, is like spend up on those elite players, cause they're great. And the ones that are, potential elite, but don't necessarily have the, every feature that you want out of, those players, or have some kind of flaws. It's like, yeah, man, just move off of those and you can not only reset, but gain, a lot more value and potentially get into one of those other assets, or use them in some other way to kind of reset, rebuild, whatever it may be. So I think it's a really good shout out. It's something that is very hard for people to do, is move off of the rising assets, especially. It's one thing to move off of a guy who's a little bit, more into his career, a veteran. You're like, oh, okay, I'm betting on the kind of like downfall of this guy's career. But when it's one of these up and coming assets, it's very hard to move off of. But you're probably right. More often than not, we should, move off of that and then find a similar asset for lesser value, and kind of use our approach for the buying portion there, and then be aggressive on the selling side, and kind of keep churning that way. Okay, one more section here. It's holding. So how do you approach holding? Like, do you ever do it? Because just talking about that last conversation there, I know that you're more aggressive. For me, like it's kind of the other side of the coin, right? Of the conversation we were just having, which is like, there's some guys like Jamar Chase where I'm like, I really don't need to move off of him, because also and we've talked about this, with those elite assets, are you ever really getting the return on the investment? And most oftentimes you aren't. So I think if I'm talking about holding, like that's really where, I'm clutching my pearls. But outside of that, I'm pretty malleable with my team. Like I don't mind moving off of guys for other guys and, making changes and whatnot. So I don't really think you need to hold. Again, if you want to have fun, like, again, I'm a Patriots fan, Drake May, it's like nobody can kill you for that, really. I just wouldn't recommend it as a general strategy for the rest of, for the most of your roster, or, I wouldn't build my teams just collecting Patriots players. If anything, I avoid them partially because of, that reason. I may want to hold them, or I may overvalue them or something like that. So outside of that, yeah, I don't really see too many reasons to hold. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, excuse me. Like, I think the biggest thing in the hold category is going to be the historical relevance of the individual player and the position that they play in. So, for instance, we've seen this going into last year, I believe, of startups. Mahomes was valued at like QB9, QB10, something ridiculous. He was landing near the end of the second. I think in some startups I saw him get selected in the start of the third. Like, just truly asinine things. Like, that is the type of asset that I would be holding at the decline. Like, even if market sentiment is against them, I'm going to hold. AJ Brown was another one this season that I had a plethora of shares of. I did sell, I think, one share in DU2, and that was to try and get into CD Lamb, which I was able to get into with the picks that I acquired from that trade. And so, I saved a couple of years between the two of them, and in my mind, tiered up from a dynasty asset with about the same amount of points. Now, like, the way that I view holding for the most part is going to be on the extreme scales. So it's going to be when players hit their absolute highs, and I believe that they have always hit those highs, like we were talking about with Mahomes, Lamar Jackson right now, those types of assets. And then on the polarized side, we're talking about rookies that have either not had a chance to play yet because of opportunity or lack of opportunity, injury, etc. For instance, Luther Burden. We've brought his name up already. It sounds like I'm like the biggest Luther Burden truther, but like Luther Burden was someone who was getting shopped around a lot, or Colston Loveland, I think, is another great example, was getting shopped around a lot early in the season. Like, folks were getting scared off of these guys because they weren't on the fields. They weren't making impact. And it's like, you need to have an understanding of whether or not you're capable of spending the draft capital it takes to acquire those players where you did and what that looks like. So, for instance, a Luther Burden, we saw a whole lot was going for like the 202 to like the 205, depending on most super flex PPR leagues, start 10, 12 teamish round type builds. Hold that shit, man. Like, if you're like, if that's what you're giving up for the player and you thought highly of him, if you were, listening to Matt Waldman and took his value at face value at, I think he's a wide receiver one in this class. If that's what your takeaway was from this draft class, then you should be holding. It's the same thing with Colston Loveland. Like, you need to understand that it's going to take time for some of these players to develop into these offenses. And I think the sad reality is that we see the polarization of rookie success, especially early in season. Someone like a Cam Scatterbo, right, who was having significantly more success than I think anyone was ready for from a fantasy production perspective. And we're like, well, if he's doing that, then why isn't Ashton Janty doing that on a weekly basis? Like, I need to get off of Janty, or I spent the 107 on Judkins, and Judkins might get suspended for the whole year because of this potential domestic violence incident. I'm going to sell off of him for 2 seconds. It's like, there are moments to hold, and those are the moments to hold, right? It's like, understand what your upfront investment was on these individual players and not make snap judgments about what their individual careers are going to look like based off of the first 6 weeks of the NFL season. And I think that unfortunately happens way too much.
That's a great point, especially on the rookies. Like, kind of it's not the same conversation as the elite players, obviously, but it's similar in that, like, with the rookies, like, you don't want to just, again, Judkins is a great example. You just drafted this guy. You already knew that there were some kind of, issues going on in the background. You're just going to now sell off of that for nothing, which I definitely saw happen in a couple of leagues where it was like he goes for a third or he goes for whatever. And you're just like, yeah, man, like, at that point, when it's one of those assets, you just hold, man. And again, I mean, those are kind of elite assets, right? Judkins, Colson, Loveland, like you're spending not elite, but you're spending first round picks on these guys in a vacuum in terms of rookies. And it's like, you don't just want to move off of that for peanuts because you're scared early on. You do have to understand like career arcs and everything, which would tell you that year one is not, the book's not written in year one. That's for sure. Gordo in the chat here. Burden babies. I think we are. I honestly think we've been pretty high on Burden. I think you've been pretty high on Burden, especially Jake, through all the turmoil, I guess we can call it, of his, the issues. What was the issue? What were the issues? It was he doesn't want to practice, or he's got an attitude. I think that was really it, right? Like those were the kind of things.
At Mizzou. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Coming out.
Yeah. That was his whole thing was like, he didn't have good rapport with the coaching staff. He didn't care to show up to practice occasionally. Like he thought he was bigger than his role in the team. And then the playing side of it, everyone thought that he was a gadget player that had to have basically developed or designed targets. And in reality, it was because Brady Cook is fucking shit. No offense to Brady Cook, but like, offense to Brady Cook, right? Like this is very much
he showed us once again in the NFL.
very much so. And like, once again, I won't make snap judgments on a rookie quarterback who doesn't have a lot of snaps under his belt, but like I saw what I need to see in college and I don't want anything a part of that. And I do think that he negatively impacted Luther Burden's development as a collegiate player. And by all means, if I was Luther Burden and I had the sophomore year that I had at Mizzou and I wanted to be in the NFL and I had to play with that shitty motherfucker for my junior year, I sure as shit would not be putting forth as much effort. Like, it's just very much reality. And so, like, for me, and we've talked a little bit about this, I do think that there is something out there to looking at some of the historic film behind some of these higher end assets that are coming out of college. Because I don't think that there's always a direct translation about what type of player they are to their final year in college versus what they're going to be in the NFL. And so if we can view a little bit more into the totality of the tape, I think it will help benefit us in the grand scheme of things, so we don't miss out on guys like Luther Burden. But yes, I have been high on Luther Burden. I've been trying to mask my highness on Luther Burden. I've been trying to get into as much Luther Burden as possible over the last like 8 to 12 weeks, and it's failed miserably. I think I only have like
this episode is not going to help any. this episode won't help at all.
It's not. No, it's done. No. I'm done. I won't. I think I already sent Gordo like 3 offers so far this season, so I'm cooked.
I haven't sent many assets or many trades. I should look into that in the leagues that I'm not in with you. But because you've probably tainted the market. Everybody's like, why is this guy coming after Burden so much? It's insane. Okay, to wrap up the hold conversation, I do really like what you have here. And I think this kind of does I don't know, put it nice and neat. Hold on to the decline of previously heightened assets, which is kind of what we were saying. Like, that is what I think you should be doing for the most part. And I think that travels, both from the elite assets to those rookies and probably in between, some guys in between as well. But I think that's kind of a motto you can live by on the holding side. You want to hold those, get through that, that lull, and then you can sell again if you want to from there when they've kind of reached those heights again. Okay, let's move on here. Some of this might kind of relate to what we were talking about before. I was alluding to that a little bit, but New Year's Dynasty resolutions. I don't know. It's a good time to just think about how you're, attacking your teams and what you're doing. And if you want to do things a little differently, we can be quick here. For me, I just want to be more aggressive in buying elite talent. But in general, I think I could sum this up as just being more aggressive all around, because I want to be more aggressive with my start-sit decisions as well. So I think, when we were talking about the selling conversation, I think that it made me want to also be more aggressive in that regard. So I think I just need to, I think I need to attack things a little bit more. I feel like this year, maybe I kind of let things come to me a little too much. And so, and it actually worked out in spots, but I'm wondering if it did, it really did. But I'm wondering if I also put forth a little more effort, if I might, find some extra, wins in there along with the ones that do come my way as well. So yeah, that's really all it is. What about you, Jake? What are you looking to do?
I promise I wasn't doing this to be
Um,
countering what
you
you
did this on
posted.
purpose, for sure.
I kind of did, but like not to be like a jerk.
To be fair,
I have
you are more aggressive than me in all regards that I just talked about, probably.
yeah.
So, I mean, it may kind of make sense. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I have be less aggressive in buying and selling assets.
We'll approach it like this, and we'll meet in the middle.
Yeah, if we can just meet mid scissor. Sorry, no, I won't provide that. I won't provide that imagery.
Is that what is? I was wondering if that's what I gave off. I'm like, geez, no, that's just your brain. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is your brain on drugs. So for me, I do think that I have this tendency of I know what I want and I get what I want basically out of trades, if that makes sense. Like the DU1 trades are
If
like
you get a trade from Drake, that's what if a trade from Jake, that's what he's thinking when he sends it. He's like, I know what I want and I get what I want. Accept that offer.
But like seriously though, like I think about the Puka Nakua and the Jamar Chase trades in DU1, right? Like I traded, I think the order of operations was I got Jamar Chase. Yeah, I got Jamar Chase from you for Puka, an early first and a second. Right? And then I took Puka. Was that right? Was it the other way around?
No, I think that's
know.
right.
Yeah, that was right. And then I took JSN. I added another early first, 2026 early first, and Ty Felton and got into Puka. And it was like, I very well could have just been done with that first trade and gotten the same asset who I already personally like more than Puka. So it's like I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was trying to acquire, and I was trying to acquire what I thought, and we had this conversation, higher scoring points in 2025 because I wanted to win that league this year because I wanted to blow it up after the season. That was my general idea of like what I'm going to do. So I took a lot of those assets, specifically draft capital that was attached to this roster because it was an orphan, and I've traded them out to the rest of the league for the most part. The rest of the league has them, and I got into Chase, Puka, and Josh Allen, and whoa, who's surprised? That team won the league. Okay, great. It wasn't very much of a. I didn't feel great after winning it, to be honest. Like, as someone else,
it also has a bunch of other really great assets on it too. Already.
Yes, so. Yeah, it does. And like someone said in the league chat, they were like, someone needs to put an asterisk next to that championship because it was someone else's roster. And I was just like, well, yeah, it was, but I also way overspent on like a bunch of shit to like make sure I won. But anyway, the whole point of me bringing this up is like I do feel like I didn't have to do those moves. Like, and I knew that. Like I knew that there was probably a world where JSN in my mind was scoring somewhere between like 3 to 4 points per game less than Puka. Like, was that going to be the make or break for this fucking build? That I need to send
no, you were going to win it regardless. You were going to win regardless. No,
so like,
no, I think you would have won with JSN anyway. Puka, right? Like didn't Puka slow down a little bit in the last 2 games anyway? Yeah. So
I don't even mean with what they actually ended up scoring. Yeah. I mean, like even in my projections that I had pre-season, which was only about 3 to 4 points per game difference, like I still would have won. Like, and I just,
for sure.
I need to slow down with some.
No, I think your point is good here. Is that you took it one step too far probably than you needed to.
Exactly. Yeah. And so just like being mindful of what that threshold looks like, I think would be really, really helpful for me just as I continue to play, because I don't want to just run through assets for the sake of it, because that is something that I do well on a lot of teams. This was not my builds. I took it over, but I feel like I acquire draft capital relatively well throughout my rosters, and being able to like supplement that with the build itself is great. But if I'm then just taking those assets and kind of like shotgunning them into the market again, it's not a particularly effective or efficient process. So yeah, that's a dynasty resolution for myself. You have any comments there?
No. I mean, I threw my comments in kind of as you were talking because I can't help myself. But yeah, I mean, I think that kind of makes sense. It's and what you had here too is this hits home for me too. But gain, extract more information from trade partners. I mean, in general, I want to gain and extract more
Yeah, exactly.
from my trade partners, not just
Yeah.
info, but also value, which I talked about a lot throughout the season. I felt like I took a lot of like offers or a lot of counters back my way. I kind of just like accepted them or took them like, oh man, this, this must be it. But it's like, then I'm like either looking at a trade poll I sent into the Discord, or I'm looking at values, thereafter that I thought I kind of already knew. And I'm like, wait, like I might have been able to even get more. And so I think that, in general, I want to just try to extract everything possible and be okay with either not getting the trade done or going back to the original deal, because most of the time it's going to be the latter, where it goes back to the original deal. But you just kind of got to be okay with eating it and not making a deal. I did that a lot better, I feel like, in the past, and I want to go back to that, where I'm just like cool walking away. A lot of the time the trade will still get sent to you later on in a different fashion, much closer to what you wanted usually. So yeah, I agree with that a lot. Okay.
Can you quantify what that more looks like?
More
because you were saying you want to extract
how much more I want to extract.
Yeah, and what is more? Like, what additional information are you trying to extract that you don't feel like you have been?
Yeah, I mean, really the information is more just like other managers' values. Like I don't know as well, I think, where their values lie. And then for me, that was definitely more talking about extracting actual value from the trades.
Okay.
Like I don't know how to quantify either of these things, to be honest with you, but it just feels like I was either taking market or under market on a lot of trades. So I'd like to feel like I'm getting back somewhere in the range of like a third to a second round worth of value on most deals. Like that seems like a lot maybe, but that's kind of where I want the scale to tip. If I'm thinking, but in a lot of the trades that I made, I feel like I either took some kind of loss or didn't take enough going the other way. After the deal was done, it just like some indicator, whether like I was talking about, whether it was a poll or whether it was just like a market indicator, I'm like, oh, I missed the mark on that, I think, a little bit. And so I just want to make sure that I don't do that going forward.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Maybe this is a bad way to approach it, but I'm just going to be honest with you about how I approach it. And so I like segment all of my teams in my head as like separate entities, and the bad moves live within that entity, if that makes sense, right? So like if a bad move happens on a DU2 build, it doesn't affect me for my DU3 build. And when I say that, I basically graphically or within cells evaluate the trades themselves over time between trade that happens, let's say January 1 on DU2 build versus trade that happens on June 1st versus trade that happens mid-season versus a trade that happens in the playoffs, right? So you have those 4 snapshots of time. And then after the season, mainly this past week, I go to each of those trades and I think about how they impacted my roster and really try to understand whether or not that market sentiment that you're talking about was as felt as a cumulative effect. Because I do agree with you, because I do that as well in the interim, right? Like I'll look at it within like a 2-week window because it's just so fresh on your mind. And you're like, for instance, if you sold off of Luther Burton 3 or 4 weeks ago, like right now, you'd be like, fuck, man, like I just missed out on at least like an early second, maybe even like a 2-second worth of value compared to what I could get for him now. And you're just like, what am I doing wrong? Or like, how could I improve that? Should I just have waited? And I don't think that that's necessarily always like my favorite approach to it, because I've noticed for myself, I get in my own head and then it impacts my next trade or my next attempts to trade, even though, to my point, is like I segment them in these spreadsheets. And just because I segment them doesn't mean my brain can do that. Like visually,
your brain doesn't process it. It doesn't care.
Yeah,
your brain is just like, fuck.
Yeah, no, my brain, they're all in one database. And I'm like, stupid. And then like, I really just need to be like very conscientious of the fact that it's like, they don't all impact each other. And I need to be able to misalign that like line in my head. That's just like, this was a trade that Jake Abrams did, and therefore they're all affected by one another. And I'm not saying that you do that necessarily, because I don't know what goes on in your head. All I'm saying is that I find it more valuable to be more critical of the trades when I look at the totality of what I did on that team in an individual year, for me to actually know whether or not I lost out on any market value off that individual trade by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. It also, like, just thinking about a league like DU2 for me, there, like, if I were to graph it out, like you were saying, the majority of my bad trades would be in that league. You know what I mean? Which is good information, because it's like, okay, on the whole, I'm making good decisions, but here I'm not. Why did that happen? And it's like, you can pinpoint and you can hone in and actually fix this thing. So, like, I totally agree with you. I don't think I'm personally thinking of this like from a holistic standpoint, and like, I need to change all the things I do in my trades because of this one thing that happened in this one league. I think truthfully, it was more of like an interaction thing in trades for me this year, where it was like, I felt like I was often conceding to counters or to the other player, instead of more controlling the narrative or the interaction, which I feel like I generally have been able to do better. And so I wasn't able to actually extract value in the way that I typically would, because I wasn't kind of working through my process as I typically would. But I think all the points you brought up are actually really important and poignant for that discussion. Okay. Anything else on that?
No, I think, thank you for coming up with that idea. I think I personally hate New Year's resolutions, but from a Dynasty perspective, it felt way more
Yeah.
palatable.
Yeah, no, it's cathartic, and it's definitely like, I feel like the ones for life are usually things that, like, you aren't actually gonna ever do, or aren't really attainable. You know what I mean? But this is like stuff that you're actually gonna, like, try to, like, think about and do, because it's like, it's this, like, hobby of yours. So yeah, I don't know. It's fun to kind of think about that stuff, and it's also what we talk about all the time: trying to get better, being honest with ourselves, accountable, all that good stuff. So very in line with DU culture. All right, trades and non-trades. We got two here, and then we will get out of here. We got one from Tommy, which I can't see because Jake is typing, and his name is now hovering over everything. Okay, so Tommy, we have Josh Allen for 26,107 and 227 firsts and 6 passing touchdown league. Okay, so 3 firsts, 227 firsts, and a 107. Obviously, 6 passing touchdown changes things slightly. Not that much for me. 107, a little light. It just feels a little light for an asset like Allen. Allen feels like he's around 4 firsts. Maybe you could push that a little bit more, but that's kind of where his value lies to me. And it's not even just like, if you added a first to this, I'd be like, oh, perfect, that's what we need. I would prefer having like some kind of actual established asset that it doesn't need to be elite. You're probably not going to get elite plus 3 firsts or anything like that, or 2 firsts, but something in the probably top 50 range, top 30 range maybe, and a couple firsts plus another second or something like that. Like, I would need a pretty substantial package. So this just feels a little light. I like the Allen side here. Any thoughts, Jake?
Yeah, so this is a league where Tommy has truly gone arms race. He has now Josh Allen, Joe Burrow.
This is a Tommy. Tommy got this done. Wow, for him.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay.
Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts are his 4 quarterbacks. If you ever wanted to impact a league, take after our good man, Tommy Blair, like, he is going to deeply impact the way in which this league is going to maneuver. And, I think at 6-point passing touchdown, it is interesting to also have Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts, but I don't think that comes with any detriment here. And to be completely fair, to Billy's points before, because I'm not discrediting them, that is insanely cheap price to pay, considering that you're sending that asset to a team that I think will happily take on the rest of the league for a playoff position for the next few years, regardless of what they do with the rest of their roster. Like, I do think that with arms race, you are so capable of impacting the rest of the league, even with a down, quote unquote, down year for quarterbacks. This is just such a beautiful way to kind of maneuver through a league and deeply impact it. So the only thing I'll add here is, like, when you are trying to trade out of Josh Allen and you're acquiring the 107 as probably one of the higher end assets, with maybe the other 27 first that isn't Tommy's being early to mid, you're really hoping and praying that that pick lands as the 101 to the 103 in 2027 to make it worth it. Otherwise, you're taking a mid-tier 27, 26 asset and just kind of playing with it. This was the same builds that I also showed Billy ended up trading away. I think it was Justin Herbert, Jamar Chase, and another asset of pretty decent value. I think it was Brees Hall for basically 4 firsts. And it was just like, even if those firsts all land where you want them to, you're still really hoping for a whole hell of a lot out of those picks. And so, that all being said,
okay, I remember who acquired. Okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's interesting. I feel like this person has done this before and has done pretty well with it. But you have to. Yeah, so basically, the person has now acquired like almost 8 picks or something like that. They probably have the majority of the first round, and so you have to hit on pretty much everything and get at least 1 or 2 very elite assets out of that, which is possible, but it's hard to do, especially off of those kind of assets that were moved. But yeah, that arms race stuff is super interesting because, yeah, the idea, I guess, is that you're altering the potential points that could be against you every week to the point in which you actually can roster, lesser talent at the skill positions and still get through it because the other team can't even match up against, or doesn't really, the other teams never have the advantage at quarterback, never have that true advantage where they're scoring 25 plus points or whatever. So you really do have a much greater margin of error as that team. And if you can slowly build up your skill positions, then you've now created a dynasty. So that's the whole point. It's good stuff. All right, last one we have here, NWO Joe. This is pre-championship. This one happened. Okay, so this was Trevor Lawrence, Brenton Strange, 2 26 thirds for Cousins, Penix, Daniel Jones, Gadsden, and a 27 first. That where did that even happen? I mean,
it was one of the offshoot DU leagues that was in Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
This feels like Trevor Lawrence pretty easily. Again, that's T-Law, Brenton Strange, 2 thirds for Cousins, Penix, Daniel Jones, Gadsden, and 27 first. Like, there's definitely a lot of stuff you can do with that other side at some point, but it's a long road back for Daniel Jones. Penix, sure. Gadsden, roller coaster value, contending 27 first. Like, okay, solid. But I don't know. It feels like the other side's much more liquid and easy to handle and offering a lot more points and just kind of all around. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what the intent was behind the other side of the trade, but basically NWO Joe got this deal done before the championship. It unfortunately didn't help him.
That's insane.
So he ended up losing by, I think,
still a good trade.
It was. No, I think this still helps him out long term. If I remember correctly, it's sad because I set up this league. It is tiered PPR, so Strange hitting a 0.75 ish tight end premium, we'll call it, over wide receivers. And yeah, let's just break down the other side, right? To your point, you said Cousins. I don't even know if he is starting in 2026. Probably not. Penix, I don't even know if he's going to start 2026 as a starter just due to his health.
Both of those guys, you're like, don't know if they're starters.
Yeah, Daniel Jones with his Achilles injury. I don't know if he's starting 2026 either.
Probably not.
And so you have 3 assets that you're going to have to hold probably for them to reach a value for you to want to get off of them, because their value isn't going to go up over the next 6 to 8 months. And then you have Gadsden, to your point, very volatile asset. And what I'm calling a contending 27 first, because it was NWO's Joe's 27 first, and he was just in the championship. Yeah, he crept in, but I think the general build is good enough to bring him back in 2026. So even we'll say, 107 to 112. Man, it's just like, if I have Trevor Lawrence, like, to your point, I'm just looking to get into liquid right now. If I'm rebuilding, or like if I'm trying to get out of him and I'm trying to get out of him while he's hot, it's like, give me something that's more liquid. I just feel like you've made this significantly harder on yourself, all in the vein of trying to go after probably the 27 first. And like, at that case, you could have gone after another 27 first that will probably be shittier than that. Like, I would probably rather get probably like 227 first, or like a 27 first and a 26 first for Trevor Lawrence and Strange, and I would have felt better than this package. I know that this package could get you at some point in time maybe 4 firsts, but like,
it's gonna be a long time waiting.
Your hopium around that is so extreme. Like, it's so extreme. Like, there's already talks about, because the major changes in Atlanta, that Michael Penix may never be a starter again there. It's like, we are in that place. He has now 3 torn ACLs. We're talking about Daniel Jones, who has had a very tumultuous NFL career with an Achilles injury. Like, these are just the assets that I just don't want to be on, and getting out of probably one of the hotter NFL quarterbacks right now because of his long hair. No, I'm just kidding. Because of his performance. It's like, we are looking at this, I feel like, the wrong way. Like, this is the antithesis of like what I would want to do with Trevor Lawrence if I was currently rostering him.
The way you set that up almost makes me want to buy some Penix. Just because of like how low his value feels like it's going to get with all that. It does feel like he might be a value. Not like this. I don't want to buy him like this, but I want to buy him.
You should buy him like this, dude.
No, yeah, definitely. That sounds great. Just ruin it. See, that would be going totally against my Dynasty New Year's resolution. Okay, buying a guy like that, like this. Real quick here, I like this, Ricky S. But the 27 first is a vaunted 27 first. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah,
which is good. Really like what it is. But also, if you rode the Trevor Lawrence journey this far, you do not sell off of him for this, bro. You could have got this for him a long time ago, like if you wanted, or like he's now finally hitting like the ceiling area. It's like, no, dude, you, like Jake said, it's multiple first time. It's time to go get like some stuff for him, like some real stuff, not some stuff that's going to require maximum effort and luck. Honestly, some luck to get some of those assets back where you want them to. What is this from Iston? Anyone buying Trevor just before the breakout was feeling pretty smart. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah. See, like Jake, you were on the wrong side of history here, man. Like you could have been the Trevor Lawrence guy, but it was me for some reason. I didn't even want to be.
Did you buy any?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Because I wasn't aggressive. Because I wasn't aggressive this year. That's the problem. I need to be more aggressive.
Yeah, you should have been. I think the narrative was all there. You're talking about offensive coordinator coming from Tampa, working with Baker Mayfield, keeping him just as successful outside of Dave Canales. The whole narrative was there, man. The whole narrative was there, and you moved away from it.
I definitely bought it. I just didn't actually, I really needed to be more aggressive this year in general in buying assets and going after the things that I believed in. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more aggressive this year. So that's definitely, that hits home. There's a lot of different indicators pointing to that. I need to step it up a little bit. So yeah, that's what's going to happen. So I'm excited about that. You got anything else before we get out of here, Jake?
No, I just wanted to shout out. We have year 2 of a non-listener league random startup in our Discord server. So anyone who's listening, you want to find a startup, We have tons that go around. I'm randomly commissioning it again. It's just another 12 dudes, all from our Discord server, said to themselves, you know what? We're fucking degenerates. It's been about 4 days since the season ended. Let's get a startup going. And these motherfuckers did. They even tried to push me to get the draft started as fast as possible. And we literally have it this Friday. It is going to be starting. We already had the 101 traded today, which was crazy. I think it was like a total of like 12 assets for one. We got the 101 traded on the Wednesday or Tuesday. I don't even know what fucking date it is. Tuesday before the startup. It is going to be a blast. But anyway, all that to say, shout out to our listeners. You guys are awesome. I wish I was more like you and could just sign up for these leagues left and right, but I can't. And looking forward to commissioning it.
Yeah, that's awesome. We do have DU6 going to be starting up soon. I don't remember when we did the other startups. Like I don't know why. Like my brain is fried and I can't remember when we typically do the startups. But it won't be long from now. It won't be. We definitely get them going. I feel like in like late January, February, something like that.
That sounds right.
So yeah, so we'll definitely get that going. It's almost full or it is filled. We're just kind of like reaching out to people and finalizing some of that. So shout out to everybody who wanted to be a part of that. Honestly, wish we had the bandwidth to do more every year because like there's definitely enough people probably to fill 2 of them. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of how it goes. It also makes it more interesting with just one and each year. So there's that. But I will be turning over all the listener leagues in the next couple of days. So keep a lookout for that. That'll be rolled over to 2026. Shout out to another great season. That was really fun one last time. But yeah, that's all we got this week. Jake, thank you so much for being here as always. Thank you for everybody being here in the YouTube comments, being here live. Appreciate y'all. Shout out. We'll have Uriah back next week. Other than that, you can find us on the socials at Dynasty Underdog. Other than that, peace out.